We are here for goodness sake. Hello family, this is Carol Worth with Paul LLC, and welcome to our third episode of the Goodness Forum, where positivity and goodness is shared and amplified. So I want to thank you for being here. We appreciate you. So we at Saul to Paul are a stand for a world that works for everyone. And what we know is that one way that happens is by focusing on the good, because what you focus on grows. So thank you. We appreciate you joining in with us to spread goodness and positivity in the world. So each episode of the Goodness Forum will feature a topic. We'll have a quote that we're going to focus on, and we'll have a wonderful guest, either an individual or a business, who will share the goodness and positivity that they are spreading in the world. And so today we have Nicole Lang, and she's going to tell you about her podcast and some of the things that she's doing in the world. So the topic today is what's in your bones. And so here is the quote that we're going to focus on. And this is a quote from a man named George Eliot, and here's the quote. "It's never too late to be who you might have been." So we chose that quote because it really speaks to coming from the authentic self and the power of that. Because oftentimes in life, I know for myself, I got to a certain age and felt a sense of dissatisfaction when I wasn't coming from my authentic, what I call child of God, the love that I am. I wasn't consistently coming from that. I had something, the gifts within me that I knew I had, that I wasn't delivering. I wasn't developing them, I wasn't delivering. And so, at an age where most people are looking to retirement, I made a change and started coming from what I call my meant to be. And this is a result of that. And so Nicole is going to talk to you about what she has as her meant to be. She has it, frames it just a tiny bit different. And that is, what's in your bones? Like, what's in your bones? And so I'd like you to start by, well, first off, I'm going to just tell you how I know her. So she is just a dynamic and amazing young woman. I met 6 years ago when I moved to Spokane through a mutual friend, and we just hit it off. And one of the things I've always loved about Nicole is her, number one, her vitality. She's very upbeat. She's always been extremely positive, and a joyous person to be around.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the other thing I love about her is just how open she is to learning and being teachable and being willing to embrace life newly. And so when we decided to do this, I absolutely knew that we had to have Nicole on the show. So Nicole has a story of doing that, what's in your bones. And so Nicole also was somebody who helped me edit the book that I wrote, Stop Being Stupid. She was amazing in giving me just wonderful feedback to help me do that. And so she's just been a great friend and a wonderful power of example of what's in your bones and, coming from your meant to be. So Nicole, would you please share with the audience what it is that you were doing in life, how your life was going, and then what happened that had you sort of make a shift and a change?
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you for that introduction. I'm quite humbling because you're one of my favorite people and I admire you so much. So thank you. And I love what you're doing here. I've loved watching you make this shift with your meant to be. And so I'm honored to come here and share a little bit of my story. So thank you.
You're welcome.
It means a lot to me. So yeah, for me, it's what's in my bones, what's written on my bones now is this passion to encourage and empower individuals, but specifically women, to rise up in their lives and communities and align with their highest selves. And I feel that. I feel doing that through yoga practices. I'm a certified yoga teacher. So for me, my own practice of yoga has given me, is really what led me to where I am today. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like providing those yoga practices really encourage people to do that. But also, it's so much more than just yoga practices. For me, oh gosh, I feel like it's such a long story, but I'll start with kind of where I was just a few years ago. I got sober in 2007, and I went back to school in 2010, and I became an archaeologist. And that was really something that I was really passionate about, and it was something that I think that's when we met, is when I was on this trajectory to be an archaeologist. I was really passionate about that. And I got the opportunity to go to UC Berkeley, and I graduated from UC Berkeley in 2014, and I went on my excavation, and I did my archaeology, and I was in this academic world, and I loved it, but something didn't always feel quite right, There was just I knew that there was something a little bit more, even though I loved archaeology, and I love that archaeologist jacket that I then got to take off and put in the closet. But I really loved wearing that. But it was when I had my daughter. I found out that I was pregnant shortly after I graduated from college. And I had my daughter in 2015. And for me, that is when absolutely everything shifted in my life. Mm-hmm. Everything changed, everything shifted. Having my daughter is probably the most profound experience so far in my life for so many reasons. And for me, my experience with having a child was also coupled with severe postpartum depression. And so I went through this phase where I really lost myself. It was like I lost myself in the, I was no longer an archaeologist, and I was no longer just me. I was mom, and I was Bodhi's mom, and I was just I didn't know who I was, and I was struggling. And through this period, again, I came back to my yoga practice. And I remembered a class I took when I was at Berkeley. It was called Anthropology of Violence and Trauma. And I thought it was going to be about what happens to people's bodies in violence. Mm-hmm. But what it was really about was a collective experience of trauma throughout communities. And it stuck in my brain because I really got to learn what trauma was, how people experience trauma, and how people heal from trauma in a community space. And so when I had postpartum with my daughter, one of the ways that got me out of that was through connecting back to my body through my yoga practice and finding a community to connect with. And it was through that then led me to pursuing, healing trauma through yoga as a calling.
So that is so interesting. So I mean, just what I'm hearing, and so just kind of, I would love for you to amplify on that a little bit.
Yeah.
So when you took that class, you were expecting one thing, and you came upon something completely different. And so for you personally, was it the healing for yourself through trauma that you got with the yoga, and then you got the idea to facilitate that with others, or was it some other kind of thing?
It was definitely that, for one. What I learned in that class is, I started practicing yoga when I got sober in 2007. And so my yoga practice and my sobriety really are on the same path.
Got that.
And so what I learned in that class is that I learned enough about trauma, the experience of trauma, and how we kind of store the trauma in the body.
Got that.
But when I was in the class, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm healing my trauma through my yoga practice.
Interesting.
I thought, this is what I'm doing, and I didn't even know it.
So it's like a mind, body, spirit connection, and that working through that.
Totally. Wow, and I remember
so
having an experience. So I'm in a classroom. I'm at Berkeley. I'm at UC Berkeley, which is a super academic atmosphere.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm in this, really powerful psychological anthropology class led by this amazing professor, and we're having this really intense discussion about trauma. And I remember sitting there in this group circle, 50 people in this circle sharing in an academic world, and I am experiencing all of my trauma because I'm learning that I can have trauma and that I had trauma. And sitting in this very academic setting, I had that flush of trauma come over me. It was like all of those emotions came over me, and then it also along with and I'm healing myself in the process. And it was just so strange, and it was this experience that happened then, and then how it 3 years later is when it actually started to materialize in my life. So it was like the seed was planted at UC Berkeley then.
Yes.
And I had a plan.
You had a good idea.
I had an idea that I was going to be an archaeologist.
Oh, well, of course.
While I was at Berkeley, that was my plan. I was going to be an archaeologist, and I really loved stone tools, so that was going to be my specialty. And, before I decided to do my yoga teacher training, I had actually prepared my family to move to Israel to continue my education.
Got it. In archaeology.
In archaeology.
Got it.
Yes.
You're going to be a
Because I was
stone
going
tool
to be
expert.
a lithic expert.
Okay, a lithic expert.
So crazy. So
I'm
I was
not sure
gonna
what that
do these
means, but okay.
No, nobody does. It's so
It
crazy.
sounds really, weighty. I'm going to be a lithic expert.
It sounds really great, right? That's what I thought.
It sounds very
Fancy, professional.
puffy.